Anyway, we all know that the fall season is upon us, and probably at one time or another, we've all gone trick-or-treating or something like that, or have kids or grandkids that have gone trick-or-treating, and probably you've all carved a pumpkin or two, right? Some point in your life. How many of you have carved a pumpkin?
Yes.
A couple of you have.
Something's on the screen.
Yeah,
You gotta
What?
get it off your screen. Can't
those
see.
big steps.
Oh, yeah. Does someone want to go up and just, can you do it, Del?
Yes.
Yeah, you've got to. Yeah, it's a new Zoom feature. You have to have permission for recording.
Got it.
You have to use the mouse, Del.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, thank you. See, I think that Del is qualified.
No.
But anyway, at one point you may have carved a pumpkin and you might have accidentally picked a pumpkin up and accidentally dropped it. Has anyone ever done that and the pumpkin
Yeah.
breaks? How many of you have ever done that before? Del, no one else has ever dropped the pumpkin and broke. Dolores, you never have? That's incredible. But
Purposely.
here's a tip I learned. When you break a pumpkin, do you know how to fix it? With a pumpkin patch. Was that good, Gail? I don't know. She's smiling, she's laughing. In all seriousness, though, I did want to take a moment. Obviously, today is a purposeful day, a meaningful day, not just for us as individuals or a country, but for around the world. It's been in the news all week. The 20th anniversary, of course, of the attacks in New York on the World Trade Center. I did want to take just a moment, 20 seconds to be precise, to observe a moment of silence, if we could all do that, and just bow our heads and recognize 20 years and over 2,000 lives, both citizens and military lives. So for 20 seconds. Okay, thank you very much, everyone, for doing that. Yes, today is September 11th, and now I bet if I were to ask any one of you here, if you could remember what you ate for breakfast this morning or dinner last night, most of you probably would not be able to remember. Maybe you would, maybe you wouldn't, who knows? I don't know. But undoubtedly, for those of us that are old enough, all of you can remember where you were on the morning of 9/11, September 11th, 2001. For me, I was actually in the Philippines at the time, and I was renting a 2-bedroom home and living with the woman that would eventually become my wife. And I remember that morning very vividly. We had our TV in our living room area, but it wasn't on. She was listening to the radio, which was in the native language of Filipino. And I was sitting kind of in the hallway area. We had a couch there, and she was in the kitchen listening to it, and she just yells, "Bomb New York, bomb New York." That's all she said. I'm like, well, that's strange. What is she talking about? And internet was still somewhat in its infancy at that time. But anyway, I thought, well, this is kind of curious. So I had to go into town anyway. I worked for an NGO at the time, and I had an office in town which had a computer and had internet. So I went there, and sure enough, I got online and looked it up. And this was even before YouTube, where you could not upload videos or anything. So there was just newspaper articles. I think it was like Newsweek or something, or Time I went to. I don't remember exactly. But sure enough, they had already had still pictures, not video pictures, but still pictures of the explosion of the plane hitting the World Trade Center. So I put it together in my mind, oh, bomb New York. That's how my wife translated what was actually being said on the radio, that a plane just flew into the World Trade Center and exploded. Her translation of that was bomb New York. And so some things do get lost in translation. After that moment, though, immediately the question was asked, and this question has been asked ever since 9/11, 2001, and has been asked in political circles around the world. This question has been asked in socioeconomic circles around the world. It has been asked in military circles around the world. And that question, of course, is why? Why would an individual or a group of individuals choose to do such an action, to hijack a plane and to fly it into a building as the World Trade Center? Why would they do that? What motivated them? What motivated them to take such an action? And for that matter, what motivates any of us? What motivates you to do what you do? What motivates you when you wake up in the morning? What motivates you when you go to work, for example? And that's what I wanted to take a look at today and speak with you about, is this question of motivation. Now, I don't know the hijackers, where they were coming from, what they were thinking, and this question of why and motivation, there has been given all kinds of answers and hypotheses and theories to this question. But in reality, in truth, there's only two things that motivate any person anywhere on this planet, regardless of your culture, regardless of your language, regardless of your social status, your economic status, or your political status. There are only two things that motivate anyone. And those two things are fear and love. And so that's what I wanted to talk with you today and ask you this question. When you do anything in your life, when you speak to another person with a certain tone of voice, when you listen to something or anything for that matter, where are you coming from? Now, of course, when I say where are you coming from, I don't necessarily mean, oh, I'm from Oregon or I'm from Ohio or I'm from Georgia or anything like that. That's the standard answer when someone asks, where are you coming from? But I mean on a spiritual level. Where are you coming from? Are you coming from a place of fear or from a place of love? And these two factors, fear or love, are what drive every decision that we do, every action that we take in our lives. And so I want to take a brief look at these two motivating factors today. The first one, fear. What causes fear? Where does it come from? Why do we have it? A couple ideas that I have about this that I know that I have experienced in my life. Fear comes from something I call a false belief, a limiting belief, or a false truth. Once upon a time, someone said something to us, oh, we're too this, we're too that, we're too tall, we're too short, we're too skinny, we're too wide, or we're not enough, we're not good enough, we're not smart enough, we're not enough of something. Now, what was said wasn't the issue. The problem with that, and that I had in my life, and I'll tell you a brief story here in a moment, was not what was said, but that we believed what was said. And when we believed what was said, we started repeating that over and over and over and over in our mind. And soon enough, that reality became our truth. The truth that, oh, I'm not smart enough, or I'm not fast enough, or I'm not tall enough, or I'm not short enough, or I'm too tall, or I'm too short, or I'm too this, or I'm too that. And we believed it. And I know that was the case for me in my life for many, many, many years. I had some very influential people tell me, oh, I wasn't good enough, but I would never make it. And you know what? I believed them. And that story lived with me until I was about 42 years old. The second factor that I believe motivates fear and the underlying reasons behind fear is this little thing between our ears right here. We can call it a mind, we can call it a brain, something like that. But what it does is it tries to figure things out. It tries to develop a plan. It tries to figure things out. Let me give you a quick example. Let me set the stage here. If you can imagine this for a second, you're on a week's vacation. You're forgotten about work. You've forgotten about your daily life, and you're in a great environment. It could be the tropics or it could be anywhere. And you're really enjoying yourself. You're having a good time. You're eating some extra ice cream. You're eating some French fries. You're going from place to place. You're doing a lot of hiking. You're just really enjoying yourself. And you get on this cloud nine and you're just feeling good. You're feeling high on life. You come back from vacation, you clean up, you put all your stuff away, and the next morning you go to work. And within 2 minutes, you have your administrator walk in and say, oh, by the way, you're being laid off. We're eliminating your position.
Yeah.
Oh, Such is my reality. This is what happened to me about 3 weeks ago. My brain immediately went into fear mode, reaction mode. Oh, what will happen? How will I pay my rent? How will I pay my food? How will I pay my bills? Of course, I have bills just like everyone. I had a small mortgage on my trailer. And of course, I had car repairs that I still owed. And of course, I had to take my dog Jackie to the emergency room about 2 weeks ago. And I still owed the bill on that. Fear immediately set in. And what did my brain start to do? It started to try and figure things out. Okay, I need to get another job. I'm going to go to Indeed.com and start applying for jobs. And so that's what I did. And guess what happened? I got rejected from every single one. I got a no. And you know what that means? That I'm not in alignment, that I'm coming from fear. There's a saying, I like to quote this here. When man plans, God laughs. When man starts planning, God starts laughing. You see, while I was away on this vacation, I had it all figured out. I had the next 5 years completely figured out. I was going to come back, finish selling my mom's house, get a little bit of funds from that, which we're getting so close to that being finalized now. I can literally see the finish line with that. Use the money, pay off my debt, have this wonderful job working with seniors, have very, very minimal monthly expenses, use the rest of the money, save it up, pay for my ministry school and my practitioner classes, and then in about 3, 4, 5 years, take a year off, semi-retire and travel. It was the perfect plan. When man plans, God starts laughing. Funny how things work. FDR said there is nothing to fear but fear itself. And when we take a look at our habits and some of the things that we do in our life, and we ask that question, where are you coming from? Another question to ask is, what are you afraid of? What truly are you afraid of? What is there to be afraid of? There's a poem I wanted to read with you. Some of you undoubtedly are familiar with this poem. It's called Our Greatest Fear by Marianne Williamson. Our greatest fear, it is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, and fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be that? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that the other people won't feel insecure around you. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in all of us. And as we let our light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to let their light shine. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. Where are you coming from? The second emotion that motivates anything we say, anything that we do, that perhaps could have been a motivating factor for why those planes were hijacked and crashed into the Twin Towers, is love. Now, how do we do that? How do we switch off our fear switch if we recognize that we're in that place and turn on our love switch? And the answer to that is very simple. And it's actually rooted in the science of mind philosophy. And that is this. It's very simple. Remember who you are. And so the question is, who are you? We teach here at Science of Mind from Ernest Holmes that we are one with God and that we are one with everything. And what is God? God is not fear. There is no fear when there is God. There is only love. And when you recognize the truth of who you are, fear cannot exist. And so all those things that you may be telling yourself that I told myself when you were young, in high school, any of that, oh, you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're too this, you're too that. In my case, I told myself I wasn't worthy, that I wasn't good enough, that I was a peon. That's what I believed. That was my truth. And you know what? That wasn't true. And so whatever you're telling yourself about any of that, if you're telling yourself, oh, you won't have enough money, how will you pay your bills? Oh, you're not good enough, you're not tall enough. That's not true. The truth of me is that I am one with God. The truth of me is that I am a product of love. I am a product of peace. That is my truth. That is your truth. And your truth is that you are good enough, that you are smart enough, that you have enough money, that you have enough presence of peace in your life, no matter what is going on in the outside world. That is the truth. What else drives love? As I said before, it's that chatter in our head. How will I pay my bills? I've got to get a job right away. We learned a couple weeks ago, I learned in Journey of the Soul practitioner class that we took here recently, and Reverend Lynn reviewed with us not too long ago, we learned to stop. The chatter in our head. Oh, you're not this. This is going to happen. I'm going to get in a car wreck. Stop. Whoa, stop, Gail. Stop. Stop. Sit and go within. Sit and go within. Take the time. Observe your presence, what you are feeling. Don't listen to the voice in your head. Listen to the feeling in your heart. That's God. That's your intuition. And when I did that, you know what God said to me? This is pretty cool. He said, you don't have to get a job right away, Brad. You're going to be just fine. And I'm like, oh, you're right, I am. Knowing that my highest good is out there, that it's coming to me right now. Your highest good is coming to you. It's out there right now. And so when I stopped and listened to my inner voice, when I turned off the chatter in my head and I stopped and listened to my inner voice, I said, Brad, take some time off. You've earned it. So that's what I'm going to do. And you can see I'm smiling now. So I'm going to go on another trip. And my sister asked me last night, where are you going on vacation? I'm like, well, right now with COVID and a lot of closed port of entries in many countries, it's difficult, but I'm sure I'll find a beach somewhere that's got my name on it for at least a week. That's what happens when you stop. Sit, go within, take the time, observe the presence and the feeling within. Where is your inner voice guiding you? And the third way that you can switch off that fear switch and turn on that love switch, it's very simple. Ask yourself, what would love do? What would God do? God is love, love is God. What would God do? And I asked that question because, again, my mind is racing. It's natural for fear and panic to set in, but it doesn't have to be that way. What would God do? When I asked that question, the answer I got was this: listen. Listen to divine guidance. Instead of when man plans, God laughs, instead of when man starts planning, God starts laughing, what if it was this? When God plans, man starts listening. Fear or love, where are you coming from? What motivates you? What motivated those individuals, fear or love, to hijack those planes? I'll get more into that in a second. But now that you've heard all of this, I want to ask you the question again. Anything you say, anything you think, anything you do, where are you coming from? Your habits, your daily routines, any of that, where are you coming from? If we are all to be truly bringers of the light, it is easy to do this when life is going well for us. The stars are lining up as they speak. We have a full stomach, we have a warm bed, a hot shower, plenty of friends. Life is good. We have money in our bank account and bills are paid. Sure, it's easy to come from a place of love then, but what happens when that carpet is yanked out from under you? What happens if you're one of the 6 point some odd million children around the world that won't have food to go to bed with. What happens when you don't have a hot shower? You don't have a bed to sleep in. Can you still come from a place of love? And the answer is obviously, yes, you can. And again, how do you do that? When the world is what seems to be, perceives to be on the outside, working against you, everything is going wrong. I have a good friend at the retirement center where I work at. It seems one thing after another. His granddaughter was in a car wreck. His wife is very ill, but cannot get a hospital bed, not from COVID right now, but from other symptoms, unable to get a hospital bed, but desperately needs to be admitted. Then on top of that, he himself got in a car wreck just the other day. It's like, what's going on here? When God starts planning, man starts listening. In times like this, again, the challenge becomes, can we come from a place of love? And the answer is yes. And how do we do that? Again, remember who you are. Remember who you are. For several years, I worked for government. I worked for public health. I was an environmental health inspector. And if you're not familiar with that position, another word to say it is environmental police. If you were polluting the air, I got the call. If you were polluting the water, I got the call. If you were contaminating the soil, I got the call. And in rural Southwest Oregon, I got a lot of calls. Now, can you imagine a call like this to a government employee? Hi, Brad, my name is so-and-so. I just wanted to say hi, see how you're doing and check in on you and let you know that, oh, by the way, my neighbor is contaminating the stream behind my house right now by dumping their garbage in it. Boy, it would have been a good day if I ever got a call like that. Pick up the phone. I didn't even get, hello, who the are you? For almost 10 years, I dealt with it. Verbally berated, there were 4-letter words I didn't even know were 4-letter words that I had thrown my way. Anything and everything, hostility to the max. And eventually, long story short, it got to the point where that was one of the many reasons I finally tendered my resignation at that position. And looking back on that experience, I realize now I made a huge mistake. My mistake was not in resigning the position. My mistake was this, and a lot of us do this in our everyday lives. I allowed the outside circumstances to rob me of my inner peace. I allowed them to take away from me who I was. I was fairly along in my self-discovery journey at that point, not my science of mind journey, but my self-discovery journey. And you all are too. Some of you have been here for years, but even if you're new here, you know who you are. And the mistake I made was to allow people to steal me from me. And as a result, I became bitter, I became tired, I became upset, I became angry. I became a hostile government employee that was there for one reason, to get a paycheck and to keep benefits. And I was smart enough to recognize at that time that this wasn't serving me and I wasn't serving my constituents. So that eventually also led to me to resign. But what I realized also in that moment is that I had control over how I feel. I have control over what I feel inside, and you have control. If you get an extra tax bill in the mail, if somebody cuts you off in traffic, if you have a family member that throws you under the bus, which I'm sure every single one of us has had that happen, you have a choice. You can come from a place of fear, like I did, and get angry and get frustrated, get upset, or you can come from a place of love and recognize your inner peace of who you are. Recognize the calmness, the stillness that you are. That's your true self. When I say remember who you are, remember who you truly are. Okay? That's where we want to come from. And that's the mistake I made. And now I realize what a blessing that was to learn that experience. I would not go through that experience again. Never in my wildest dreams would I wish upon anyone to be yelled at and screamed at and threatened and had 80-pound pit bull dogs let loose when you're arriving on the property. Ooh. Do you ever want an experience of your throat dropping into your stomach like in less than a second? Have an 80-pound pit bull running at you at full speed. That will do it. That will do it. But ultimately, I learned it's about taking responsibility for how I feel and acknowledging that presence within. And this is what I've learned to do. And this is what you can learn to do. And to give you other examples throughout the course of history, this is what Nelson Mandela did. 27 years in prison, and he came out with a heart of love. Martin Luther King Jr., one of my heroes, I was fortunate enough to visit the Civil Rights Museum in Memphis, Tennessee, had his life threatened almost daily, called every nasty word that you can imagine. Yet he held his ground and came from a place of love. And of course, our greatest example throughout the course of history, Jesus. Being crucified on the cross, I can't think of anything more cantankerous, so to speak, than that. Yet through it all, he demonstrated the one true thing, who he truly was, and that was love. That's who I am, that's who you are. And so again, we have that choice. Where are you coming from? Anything you say, anything you think, anything you do. Jumping ahead now, it's been 20 years since 9/11. It's the 20th anniversary. And what have we learned? And I'm not talking about what have we learned along political lines, along social lines, along geographic lines, anything like that. What have we learned about us as a human race? What have we learned about the human spirit? One of my favorite quotes that I wrote for this by Martin Luther King Jr. The richer we have become materially, the poorer we become morally and spiritually. We have learned to fly in the air like birds and swim in the sea like fish, but we have not learned the simple art of living together as family. So in 20 years, what have we learned? And the question then becomes, how do we learn to live as family? Whether we're Jewish or Muslim, Islam, Hindu, Christian, Catholic, Eastern Orthodox, science of mind, unity, regardless of what we are, our thoughts, our beliefs, how do we learn to get along? How do we learn to live as family? And again, the answer, I think, is very simple. It's rooted in the heart of the science of mind philosophy. Again, we are all one with God. You are one with God. Know the truth. The truth is that every one of us on this planet is good enough. Every one of us is smart enough. Remember who you truly are, that place of love. So next time when you find yourself getting nervous, getting anxious, you find that little voice in your head going a million miles an hour. Brad, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this, da, 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 da. And if you're finding yourself getting rejected, eight rejections in a week, stop. Sit, go within, take the time, observe how you're feeling. Where do you want to come from? Do you want to come from a place of fear? Or do you want to come from a place of love? And know this also, this is something very important I learned also. If you find that you are coming from a place of fear, guess what? It's okay. There's nothing wrong with coming from a place of fear. The mistake is staying in the place of fear. The mistake is living from a place of fear. And I know for me in my personal life, I'm still doing that. To give you an example, I'm very healthy, I'm fit, I exercise, all of that. A lot of people look at me and they envy me. The truth is I do it because I'm afraid. I'm coming from a place of fear. And so that for me is something that I need to work on. Many of us will probably never know the events of 9/11, what motivated the hijackers truly and what they were thinking. Were they coming from a place of love or a place of fear? It depends on who you ask and in what part of the world. I do know this though. Whenever we do come from a place of love, first and foremost, there is no violence. Violence cannot exist when there is just love. Anger cannot exist when there is love. Nervousness, anxiousness, pick your word, cannot exist when there is a place of love. In love, there is only peace and there is only harmony. And while I am only one person, and you all are only one person, together in this world, we can be the light and we can be the change we wish to see in the world. But it starts with you and you and you and me, and the simple question, where are you coming from? If you can be that light and come from a place of love, not when it's easy, such as a birthday party, a wedding, the birth of a grandchild, but when it's difficult, when you get cut off in traffic, when you get that extra tax bill, which happened to a resident of mine a couple weeks ago. He asked me for help. I'm not a tax man. But when you learn to come from that place of love, then events like 9/11 will cease to exist. School shootings will cease to exist. We have the opportunity, each one of us, to be that light. It is true, you can be the change in the world you wish to see. And it starts with where you are coming from. We see and know what happens in the world today when we are not aware of where we are coming from. Let's see and experience what happens in the world when we are aware of where we are coming from. And so it is.